Why doesn't Cutter Gauthier want to play here? That's the big question.
It is the big question.
And I know that no one has an answer.
Which is why we're going to keep talking about it.
Elliot Friedman has surmised that has something to do with burning a year on the ELC, potentially bonus overages for games played, whatever it might be. I can't imagine that's it because the Flyers are well under the cap.
Well, let's go in a little bit more detail there. But look, we don't know.
No.
Let's start with the timeline, because I feel like unless we're explaining the start to finish, we're going to be jumping in medias res and it won't make any sense. Okay. So this all starts, the Flyers draft him in July of 2022 with the 5th overall pick. Cutter Gauthier tells the Flyers, I am built to be a Flyer. I want to be a Flyer. Generally speaking, you do not draft a guy that high unless you have confirmation from him or his camp that, like, yes, if we pick you, that player will not have a problem signing with the Flyers. Like, there's a reason why Arizona, even though Matvei Michkov was staring at them at number 6, why they picked another Russian player not as good as Michkov. It's because Michkov made it clear to them via back channels that, hey, if you take me, I ain't becoming a Coyote.
And that's I guess, like, the difference. Yes, a CHL player could, like, go overseas, but they're probably not going to. If it's like, all right, if I'm going to play somewhere I don't want to play, I'm going to make the most money I'm just going to play in the NHL. A college player can always stay in college. Right. An international player can always stay international. Right. And that's the little bit of difference. Like a CHL guy, like, you could do what was it? Austin Matthews was like, I'm 18. I'm going to go. I'm going to go make money for a year. Like, you can do that, but most guys wouldn't.
And he was American anyway.
He was American.
He was a US NDTV guy. But anyway, so that happens. They get confirmation that Gauthier is very open to the idea of being a Flyer. So they draft him. Everything's happy. Everything's great. Then he goes and plays his freshman year at Boston College. And I remember, I went up to Boston College in November of that year, and I interviewed Cutter Gauthier. And Cutter Gauthier was open to interviewing with me. He talked about how excited he was to be a Flyer. I had a really good interview with him. He seemed like a decent enough kid. So through the season, it appeared that Cutter Gauthier was very much on board with being a Flyer. It seems like the change of heart from Gauthier's standpoint happened somewhere between March and May, because what we know is that apparently the Flyers had some sort of contract conversation with Gauthier when his season got done, when Boston College was knocked out of the playoffs.
March 10th, March 11th.
Something like that. And there's been rumors that basically Gauthier brought up the possibility of, well, what if you signed me now and had the contract start and maybe I can play a couple games in the NHL? And the Flyers more or less, and this is rumor, I can't confirm this is what I've read from Friedman and Marek, basically, that the Flyers said, we're already going to be over the cap once the bonuses kick in. We'd rather it start next season. That's when we'd like to sign you. We'd rather have the contract begin in 23-24 rather than 22-23. In addition, and this is something Briere said to Jeff Marek today on the Jeff Marek Show, their impression from Gauthier was that Gauthier wanted to go back to school for his sophomore year anyway. So I think the Flyers took this as, okay, we talked about the possibility of him signing now. He wants to go back to school anyway for his sophomore year. Fine. That solves this problem. We'll circle back up later in the summer. Then, by the end of May, so Gauthier then goes home for a little bit, goes to World Championships, plays for Team USA, does quite well, scores 7 goals against professionals, has a really good tournament. He then, through his camp, gets back to the Flyers, this is like late May, and says, I want to talk. And Briere apparently believed that he was reaching back out to say, I changed my mind. I now don't want to go back for my sophomore season. I want to play for the Flyers next year. The Flyers, according to Briere, were open to this. They were basically drawing up a contract for this kid. And they get on the Zoom call, and I'm guessing Kurt Overhard, his agent, or maybe Gauthier specifically, says, I don't want to be a Flyer anymore, trade me. Then, from the end of May through the end of 2023, basically, Gauthier then basically went radio silent. Now, they still were able to get in contact with Overhart. Overhart's obviously a big deal agent in the NHL. It's not like he was not returning the Flyers calls, but the answer he was giving the Flyers was, Gauthier doesn't want to talk. He already told you he doesn't want to be a Flyer. You should trade him. And the Flyers tried other avenues. They sent John LeClaire and Patrick Sharp up to Boston College, which is a normal thing. teams send their scouts or player development people up to see college games all the time.
Yeah.
Usually the player will say hi, talk with them a little bit, whatever. Gauthier apparently was not willing to do that.
Did not do.
In the interim, they're continuing to try to reach out to his camp. Nothing from Gauthier or his family. They figure, well, we know he's going to be in Sweden. We're going to go out there, take one last crack at him. They take one last crack at him. He continues to say, I'm not talking to you. Then they make the deal on Monday. So really where we're at here is something happened in between March and May to solidify Gauthier's opinion that he no longer wanted to sign with the Flyers and he wanted to be traded. Now, what happened? We can speculate, and we can now speculate for freely. But I wanted to set the stage so I knew what we're talking about and where that pivot point was.
And just as an aside, I mentioned, well, the Flyers are well under the cap. This all occurred, these conversations about him turning pro at the end of last season. This is prior to Provorov trade. They weren't able to move JVR. It's prior to the Hayes, all the subtractions they made to be in the position they're in now. So I think that's important. It seems like there was just a massive miscommunication because you brought up the other day, the Logan Cooley conversation.
Right.
And it was well, probably going back. We'll see. We're not sure. Neither side's really sure what's going to happen. And then late in the summer, they make it that was always could have been on the table.
It could have been.
We don't know what we're going to do. The organization is in upheaval. Let us just circle back to this. Now, when his season ended last year, March 10th, I believe, Flyers had 16 games left, which means if he plays 10 of them, his contract does not slide. He burns a year on his ELC. That may have something to do with it. There's a bunch of potential reasons, but all this stuff just seems very run-of-the-mill.
Yeah.
This is the kind of shit that happens all the time, and for a dude to just be nope, not even talking to you, there had to be, and he says there was not one thing. That's one of the quotes that has come out. It was just a recurring
several things
thing. And
and I do want to later, I want to go into this because this is a fascinating debate. But I do think that the sticking point for most Flyers fans, and I think the sticking point for the organization really is, okay, you decided that you're turned off by us for whatever reason. Maybe we messed up in some way. Fine. But then you don't even give us a chance.
Yeah, that's the big problem for me.
That's
the way
really
you handled it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We all silly like the mayor.